everyone, and welcome again to Leaders Uncut. This is Catherine Oakes, your host. And today it is my pleasure to have with us Jeremy Grandstaff, who is a Senior Vice President of Business Development and Partnerships. How are you doing for CurbCutOS? Sorry, I have to mention your company, for CurbCutOS. How are you doing, Jeremy, today?
I'm doing really great, Catherine. I really appreciate you bringing me on your podcast. I love anytime I get a chance to talk about CurbCutOS and what we're doing in the world, and obviously to talk about how we can improve the world. So very nice to be with you, and such an honor. Thank you so much.
Well, great. Well, you're welcome. So tell me about what you're doing, what you're doing with CurbCutOS, and then what is your vision and your mission, and what's happening in your world right now?
Well, that's a lot to answer. So let's start with what we do at CurbCutOS. So CurbCutOS is a digital accessibility company. We help our clients with many things, like making sure their websites or their applications are accessible to people with unseen and seen disabilities. So you probably don't know this, Catherine, but there are over 1 billion people in the world who have a seen or unseen disability. A seen disability is like someone who is blind, like myself. An unseen disability would be someone who is neurodiverse, for example. And so there's 1 billion people in the world, or 1 in 4 people in the US that have a seen or unseen disability. Those people leave approximately $12 trillion plus in shopping carts because they cannot complete the buying process. Wow. So for us at CurbCutOS, it is not just about helping you be compliant, though that's important, especially with the EU passing the European Accessibility Act recently, but it's also about making sure that companies are doing, the right thing. And to put a little more sugarcoating on top of it, it's also about helping companies make sure that they are getting all of the revenue that they can from potential clients, and that they're not losing revenue to their competitors because their competitors have accessible assets. So that's a little bit about CurbCutOS.
Very, very interesting. My God, 1 out of 4 people in the US has this type of disabilities. I had no idea there were so many people. So I can understand that the amount of money left in shopping carts is very high. Incredible. I had no idea. So tell me, Jeremy, first of all, how are most companies organized and compliant with ADA? And if they are not compliant, why is it? And what should they be doing to improve that? Because it is making a big difference.
Well, I don't have a statistic and wouldn't want to feed you a number just to feed you a number. But I will tell you, as far as how many companies are compliant, I will tell you that 96% of all websites, that's all websites in the world, are not compliant.
Is that true? Wow.
96%. And so when we're thinking about companies losing money, it's really because as a blind person, I'm not going to shop somewhere that I can't complete the buying process.
Of course.
Right? Yeah. And so I'm going to end up taking my business elsewhere. Now, what can clients do, or what can companies do about that? Well, let's first talk about why they should, because I think that that's really important, right? So what's the business case for accessibility? 1, the business case is it's the right thing to do. Number 2, it is about being compliant. Where are you from, by the way?
I'm from France originally.
Right. So France is part of the EU, and the EU just passed the European Accessibility Act, which says all companies who do business with countries in the EU need to be compliant when it comes to digital accessibility, and they need to be that way by July 1st, 2025.
Phew. Wow.
Now, how each country chooses to implement that is left up to each country. But it does mean that we're seeing a lot of European clients right now and potential clients that are saying, oh my gosh, this is coming up. I don't know what I need to do.
Yes.
So
Sure.
the first thing that you do when you're in that situation is pick up the phone and give me a call. And let's have that conversation, right? CurbCutOS does not just prescribe solutions. That would be more of a transactional model that most people working in the disability access field are progressing with. And the problem with that is that when we live in a world of transactions, we aren't building the relationships that we need in order to bake in accessibility as part of the design process.
Right.
So one of the things that we do is we actually do a three-way audit with our new partners over at Ipsos. Ipsos, by the way, is also a French-based leading market research firm. And Ipsos will do a user flow test to look at the user experience. We take that, combine it together with an automated and manual aggregated audit, and it's a three-way view of being able to see not just the user experience, but the accessibility of the digital assets that a user is using. So I'm really excited about that project, about that product, because it gives us the ability to really help European companies in being able to assess where they're at on the digital accessibility journey, but more importantly, so that European companies or government agencies can not only best serve their clients or their constituencies, but they can make sure that all people can purchase services or get services from them if we're talking about a government agency. So that's just Europe alone. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the US also has the 508 and 504 legislation as well, which we can use to help clients. And what we're finding is, especially finance and healthcare companies, there's so much happening regulation-wise that to not be accessible is creating problems for you to be able to serve your clients. So I'll stop talking for a little bit then. You were saying?
Yeah, no, that's, and I was going to tell you that the banking industry is definitely going to have to make some changes here, because compliance is critical for them, as well as other industries. But I know banks have to pay great attention to that. So you were just mentioning that you're doing an audit. How long is the audit typically?
Well, that depends on what we're auditing, right? That's a loaded question. Usually 1 to 2 weeks. It depends though on the site. It also depends on the type of audit, right? If we're doing an aggregated, automated and manual audit, probably 1 to 2 weeks, maybe 3, depending on how big the site is. You're probably looking at 3 to 4 weeks if we also team up with Ipsos and include that user flow test as well. And it's really because with that solution that Ipsos and us are teaming up to provide, you're catching 60% more errors than you're going to catch with just doing an aggregated audit.
Right.
Now, we do offer automated solutions for auditing as well, which handles, this won't make much sense unless you're actually in the field, but we use what's called a multiple rule set approach. Most automated auditing software, they only use one set of rule sets. We use multiple. And the reason that we do that is because not all rule sets are going to catch everything. And so with our automated audit, you're actually catching more than you would if you just used a one rule set auditing solution.
Okay, got it. Wow, all right, but that's actually very fast. I mean, I was expected something longer than that. Yeah, and then of course you charge a monthly fee, which seems to be very reasonable too, right?
Well, so we do charge a small monthly fee, but that's for access to our auditing system.
Okay.
And what happens is there's a subscription fee, and then you're paying for each time you run an automated audit. What we also do recommend, though, to our clients is to actually take the time to do an automated and a manual audit. We can actually put the manual audit data in with your automated audits that you're running into the system. And
Mm-hmm.
what that gives you the ability to do is to really look at um, things from more than just a WCAG rule set, and that's the standard, by the way. It's
Mm-hmm.
the WGAC WCAG is what they call it.
Okay.
Um, and so ultimately, though, most times what we find is that when someone wants to take the cheap way out, they're going to find the cheapest solution. And that solution is not necessarily going to get you the best results.
Yeah.
And so, though it may take an extra little bit of time to have a conversation with us about where you're at in your journey of accessibility, then it's kind of not, well, whatever solution you do is not always going to meet your needs. And one of the things that I pride myself on, and that I know CurbCutOS prides ourselves on, is going to make sure that it's not transactional, that it is really about helping you figure out where do you want to be with regard to accessibility and what is the best way for you to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Does AI play a role in what you are doing?
Well, I think AI plays a huge role in everything that everybody does,
Okay.
whether we want to admit that or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, am I going to talk with you about how AI is directly used in CurbCutOS systems? Probably not, because that would get into trade secrets, right? But I will say that CurbCut is always looking at what do we have happening in AI? What are ways that we can tap into the power of AI in order to create better solutions for our clients?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's simply smart business. New technologies are not going anywhere, right? So finding a way to optimize what you are doing, utilizing those new technologies makes sense and would benefit everyone.
I mean, to give you an idea, I use AI a lot as a blind person. If I want to know the exact color of my shirt, for example, there's a program that I can take a
Oh,
picture of myself and actually know the color of my shirt,
love
right?
that.
So
Yeah.
there are definite ways that people with disabilities are tapping into the AI space, and I think that there is an opportunity for every company to look at how are we using AI? How are
Mm-hmm.
we protecting people from the misuse of AI? But moreover, how can AI improve our lives, and what can we tap into that's going to give us an advantage
Mm-hmm.
both in the world of people with disabilities, but I mean, one thing that I want to kind of hammer home to your listeners: when you make sure your website is accessible to someone who is blind, like myself, that actually increases the impact that your website is going to have on people without disabilities. They
Mm.
call it the curb cut effect. So,
Mm.
are you familiar with what a curb cut is?
I mean, yes, I think so, but go ahead, please explain because I'm sure I'm going to learn something here.
So, a curb cut is the ramp that exists at a curb, excuse me, for someone to be able to get into the street. Let's say they're using
Yeah,
a wheelchair,
right.
right? They can
Yeah.
go down the curb cut.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the United States, when the ADA was passed, curb cuts were put into the ADA because people in wheelchairs wanted to be able to access the street, and they could not do that if there wasn't a curb cut.
Mhm.
However, if you jump ahead a number of years, now curb cuts are being used by moms with strollers,
Oh, yeah,
kids on their bikes,
true.
kids pulling their wagons behind them,
Mm.
people on scooters going from place to place, maybe even someone who has broken their foot and they need not quite as big a step getting into the street, right? As they're working on crutches. The
Yeah.
point is that though the curb cut was designed for people with disabilities that were using a wheelchair, it is now used by everybody in society.
Yeah,
I'll
true.
give you another example of this. My husband and I love the show The Crown. Have you ever seen it?
Yes, I have.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing, right? But we watched the first 2 episodes of it, and my husband says, Jeremy, I can't keep watching this with you. And I'm like, why? This is so great. I really want to watch more. We got to watch more. He's like, yes, but I've been sitting here describing everything that's happening in the background, and that is just a lot of information. I just don't have the capacity, right? If you think about it, a lot of that show is what you're seeing,
Yes.
right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So he has to tell you. He has to tell you everything that's going on. Yeah.
That's right. So
Yeah.
I agreed that for the first time in our household, audio description would be turned on, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that audio description is telling me what's happened. Now, let me tell you something. Audio description 4 years later is still on in our house. You want to know why?
Tell me.
It's not just for me as a blind person, though it is helpful. It's so my partner can watch TV with me and be looking at his phone the whole time and not have to look at the TV.
I love it. Oh my God, I didn't think about this, but you're right.
You're going to turn on audio description now when you get home, aren't you?
Oh, I love it. Wow. It's so many people don't even understand and realize what it is that you have to do. It's right. It's when you don't have any disability, it's really hard to imagine what you have to do and how the people who live with you have to adjust. Which when you have this type of help, my God, this is huge. I can understand that. Wow. How fascinating, and it's just so great to see that you're so involved in a company that is really changing the lives of millions, but also improving the bottom line of companies here that are losing millions of dollars by not implementing those compliance items.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. And that's why, like, we're so excited at CurbCut to be partnering with Ipsos, because Ipsos has markets in 22 countries, and that is 22 countries that we are now able to team up with Ipsos and serve.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about creating opportunities for companies to get more of the slice of pie.
Yeah.
Right? To get more of the pie, to better tap into, if you're a government agency, it's about making sure that your agency is able to serve all of the constituents. That includes people with disabilities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're talking about finance, it is about making sure that when you need somebody to sign the paperwork that you're sending them for that new house that they're trying to buy, or for their insurance. My gosh, the things that we need in this world in order to make sure that we are protecting our families. Now you can make sure that people with disabilities are part of that equation. Not only does that make your company look good, but it gives you increased bottom line. Same with healthcare.
Yeah.
You run a healthcare company, my gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if we didn't have people say, yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't fill out that paperwork because it was on a clipboard.
Huh.
Right?
Yeah.
And now as a blind person, I can fill that out. Or here's one to think about. I'll give you a couple examples. If your company's website constantly flashes things across the screen,
Mm-hmm.
like you know how it just zoom, zoom, zoom.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has a seizure disorder, that will give them a seizure just by
Really?
seeing it. It's like
Really?
strobe lights,
I had no
right?
idea. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Someone who is neurodiverse, if your site has lots of text and it can be overwhelming to them and they will not buy from you, they will take their business somewhere else.
Oh my God. See, I didn't even think of that. That is
Hmm.
so true, so interesting. Wow. So, it's interesting because I was just before our call, I was on the phone with a banking client of mine, and they were just talking about that compliance. And if a bank is not compliant, you have institutions that are paid to go specifically after banks and sue them for not being compliant. So for them, having that covered, it's huge peace of mind.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think so I'm a big fan of not scaring the crap out of people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I function. I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe in like fear-based tactics to get
Mm-hmm.
people to say yes to me.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I now don't get me wrong. Do I think as companies we have to worry about being sued for lack of accessibility? I absolutely do. But I don't think it's going to be you weren't accessible, therefore I'm suing. I think it's going to be you weren't accessible, therefore I couldn't access what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I have no other way to work with you,
Yeah, well,
right?
that's healthier. That's definitely a healthier approach, but not everybody is like that, unfortunately.
Well, I think the other piece of that, like I said, yes, accessibility may be, compliance may be where we start the conversation,
Yeah.
but I guarantee you, no company that I've ever talked to, when I say this could help you raise your gross sales, is going to
Mm.
say no.
No, yeah. And that's a very positive approach that is also very down to earth, and that makes sense. Yes, I
Well,
can.
I think you also have to make it about the company and about the people that work at the company,
Yeah,
right? I
yeah.
was speaking with a mortgage broker, thinking about this banking client that you have that I know you're going to make an intro for me to. But the I was talking with a friend of mine who's a mortgage broker, and by taking the time to take a step back and say, why are you a mortgage broker? I found out that she believes that being a mortgage broker gives her the ability to help people in underserved communities to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get access to housing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And many of those underserved communities are people with disabilities. And so if I take the time to really understand what is behind a conversation around compliance, what I'm usually going to find is that there's a larger vision that also helps to reinforce why we want to be compliant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. You have a very healthy, wholesome approach to all of this, Jeremy, and that's beautiful to witness.
That's very kind of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Catherine.
Yeah. So, my God, I'm sure you have had lots of experiences, and also as a blind person, if there is anything that you would like to share with other people with disabilities, or even with people that don't have disabilities but that have to work with people with disabilities, what type of inspirational message would you want to share with them?
Oh, there is none. Life is not, no, I'm joking. I'm totally being funny. I just want to see if I can make Catherine laugh.
Yeah.
Um, that's a tough question, right? Okay, so I'll start talking for, I'm going to give you two different takes on this. First is talking to people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Though we don't like it, our job is many times to help somebody who has never met someone with a disability understand and be more aware and educated on what people can do even when they have something that is creating an ability challenge for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are many times when it is so hard as a person who is blind or a person who has a disability like I do to stay in what we loosely and jokingly within the disabled world call education mode, right? Where it's my job to educate the public on, what it's like to be a person with a disability and what I can achieve and that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes when we spend, I'm 48 years old. I've been Mr. Education Man for 48 years. After a while, it kind of starts to get a little annoying.
Mm-hmm.
But to people with a disability, what I would say is the best way you can educate people is to just be you and to bring that grace to the conversation where you can say, oh, you don't know. Would it be okay if I shared with you what you don't know?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The second message that I will give you is toward people without disabilities. And it's a 2-part message.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, I guarantee you that either at least one person in your family or your circle of friends has a disability, whether you know it and can see it or whether you can't.
Yeah.
Right? That's the first piece.
Yeah.
The second piece is, this is funny because I used to actually share this piece of wisdom with every client that I had when I was a management consultant before I came to work for CurbCut. And it's really simple as this. Be careful with your judgments. Instead of making judgments, ask questions of curiosity.
Oh, you just gave me chills. That is so beautiful, so true.
And I'll give you an example. I'm chuckling because as I'm starting to talk about this example, I'm reminded of a scene from Ted Lasso that's going to feel very similar to this. And by the way, I've never seen the movie Ted Lasso, so I don't even know if it's a good movie. I just saw the reel on Instagram. But last week, I was at the IAAPA conference.
Mm-hmm.
And if you check my LinkedIn and social media, you're going to see a video where I shot, I was at a basketball, I don't know, they invented a basketball game that has all kinds of holograms or something. Anyway, so they asked me if I wanted to try. So I shot 2 baskets, and then the second basket, I made it. And if you listen to the people in the video, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you made that. You're a blind guy. How did you do that? Oh my God. What nobody ever stopped to ask me was the following things. Have I ever played basketball before? Yup.
Oh, yeah.
Have I ever shot a basketball before? Absolutely. When I was 8 years old, my dad set up a basketball hoop, and behind the basketball hoop was a radio so that I always knew where the basket was. And I got very good at shooting the ball.
Yeah, you had lots of practice already. That makes sense.
Well, but it's all about asking questions of curiosity, not making judgments.
But you've tended to do this, right? I think the original reaction is that, and you have to stop yourself and realize that it is not a sign of inferiority at all. It is actually a sign of strength.
To ask questions, you're absolutely right. I think first of all, it's okay to have a judgment. It's not okay if you let that judgment drive the conversation. So I'll give you an example. Someone that I met last week said, "Oh my God, holy crap, I'm so glad to see you here. I know you just walked over to the convention center, but there's 3 steps right here, and I don't want you to fall down the 3 steps. I literally had just walked a mile and a half. 3 steps is not going to be a big deal to me, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, and remember, this goes back to talking with people with disabilities now.
Yeah.
I can be annoyed and angry at that person, or I can simply say, I understand to you the 3 steps may look crazy for me to do, but I just walked a mile and a half to get over here. I think I'll be fine. And I just walked down the steps.
Yeah, but it's coming, I think it was coming from a place of love, right?
But you have to understand something. It doesn't matter when you're so what I'm going to say is going to make it sound like I'm being a jerk, and I'm not. When you're a person with a disability, it's hard to remember that it's coming from a place of love, because sometimes you get asked some pretty stupid questions.
Yeah, I can see
I'm
that.
just,
Yeah.
and let me not say stupid, because that's not fair. Some pretty uninformed questions, right? Like one of my favorite ones that I got was, well, who dresses you in the morning? Well, I get up and dress myself, right? Or I had met somebody for a business dinner, and we're having all this great conversation, and our food comes, and literally the guy sitting across the table from me said, now, do I need to feed you, or are you going to be like, it's hard sometimes to not be offended by that, right?
I can see that.
To your point, it's also really important to remember that people genuinely need to ask those questions so that they know. And so usually when I get a question that catches me off guard so that I'm not a jerk to somebody, I will say, wow, I did not expect you to ask that question. I'm just curious, am I the first blind person that you've ever met?
Oh.
And they may say yes, and I'll go, what do you think blind people can do? Tell me a little bit more about what your impression is of a blind person. And usually what I'll find out is they don't really know. And that's why they're asking. And once I know that, by the way, it's much easier for me in my head to say, wow, I'm so glad I have this opportunity to make sure that they do know the capabilities of people with disabilities.
Where you have a very positive, optimistic, and kind perspective on all of that, which I'm sure makes a difference in your life too.
Well, I think so. I mean, I try.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. My God, Jeremy, it's such an inspiration, such an incredible positive example of how you can live your life and how you can make a change, and a positive change for the lives of millions. And you are doing this with CurbCut, because CurbCut is offering services that help impaired people, but like you said, help businesses too. So Jeremy, if someone wants to get hold of you, what's the best way to do this?
Well, you can find me in any of the following ways. First, I'm on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Jeremy Grandstaff, JeremyGrandstaff.
Okay.
So that's the first way. Second way, Jeremy G, JeremyG at CurbCutOS.com. That's CurbCutOS.com.
Okay.
Can also, I guess, call me at the office, 202-810-5368.
Yeah.
And usually if you start with one of those, it's not hard to get a hold of me. And usually I will send you a scheduling link, and we'll, have a conversation to see how I can be helpful.
Perfect. Wonderful. So we'll share that as well. We'll write it down on the video itself. And thank you, Jeremy. I mean, it's been such an incredible discussion with you each time. It's so it lifts me up. Can I speak? It lifts me up. It's the end of the day. I've been speaking all day.
You're
sometimes.
doing wonderful. It's so great to be with you, and
Oh my
just
God, yeah.
what a great opportunity to just talk with you and your listeners about Curb Cut. And really, I think you hit the nail on the head. We are trying to change lives,
Yeah.
one website and app at a time.
Yes, that's exactly what you're doing. Well, thank you, Jeremy. We'll share everything. I will make sure that my followers share your story as well, because I think it's an incredible story.
I
So
appreciate that.
thank you very much. And for
All
everyone else,
right.
thank you for listening. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel and like what you see. This helps us continue what we're doing. We're here to spread the good, to inspire and motivate. So hopefully that does the trick. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next time.